I can still hear the practicing going on very slightly.
Yeah.
Oh, there are 6 people.
Yes. Welcome, everyone. We're just getting things set up, and we are starting our live feed on Facebook. So if you know anyone who is not a part of who didn't register and isn't part of the Zoom conference, they can join us on Facebook on our Facebook page. And I just need to set this up, and we will get started here in just one moment. Okay, so once again, welcome everyone. We have a few people who have registered who aren't here yet, but we're going to go ahead and start for the sake of time and to respect those of you who are here right at the beginning of the workshop. My name is David Wood. I'm the Special Projects Manager for Early Music America. And on this webinar this evening, our second of our new monthly webinar series, we'll be talking about representing yourself in the best way in your performance applications. We have Early Music America's Executive Director, Karen Brooks, as part of the panel, as well as Alice Cullen-Ellison, who's part of our Emerging Professional Leadership Council, but also a member of Incantare and Bourbon Baroque. And most recently, if you received the Early Music America EMAG, you will recognize her as the focus of our cover article from the September issue of that. So just a few notes about the webinar itself and how we're going to run the webinar, and then we'll dive right into it. You will notice at the bottom of your screen, if you're using Zoom, that there's a Q&A function, and you can use that to submit questions at any time throughout the webinar. We'll be answering those closer to the end of the webinar. We're not planning on spending a whole bunch of time explaining things. We want to give plenty of time for you to be able to ask your questions and have those answered. So please use that Q&A function. We'll get to those as quickly as we can. If you are joining us via Facebook Live, we are on Facebook Live as well. If you're joining us via Facebook Live, feel free to put your questions in the comments, and we'll try to get to those as quickly as possible as well. This will be archived on our website along with our webinar from the past month, from September, where we spoke about using Facebook pages for early music ensembles and other ensembles, just how to maximize your presence on social media. And this one will also be archived on the website as well. If you at any point would like to answer, we have a poll that we're going to put up here in just a moment to let us know if you're actually on this because you're most curious about how to apply for the Early Music America Festival and Showcase next year in 2020. You can just answer that poll if you would like to. And also we encourage you to use the chat or the comments here on Facebook and just let us know where you are tuning in from, just a city and state or a state or however you want to do that, because we're just curious to see where you're listening from. So right now we're going to go right into it, and beginning the panel discussion this evening, we have Executive Director of Early Music America, Karen Brooks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Catalyst for this particular webinar was the fact that our deadline for the 2020 Emerging Artist Showcase and the Young Performers Festival is October 31st. And we have already had quite a few questions from people asking about eligibility or requirements. We thought it would be a good idea to actually together present, how to best present yourselves in general for this specifically, but also for the summer workshop scholarships, for example, that we operate next year in the spring every year, and for the very, very many competitions, festivals, scholarships that you are all involved with applying for over the course of your musical lives. And the reason this has come up is that we receive many, many, many applications, and we have a small number of judges. We have 6 judges, in fact, for the showcase and the Young Performers Festival, and we have 3 judges for the summer workshop scholarships. And they are looking at literally dozens and dozens of applications, and inevitably a small number of them rise to the top just simply because they are so beautifully presented. We would like everybody to have that opportunity, obviously. We don't want anybody to feel like they're not going to have a fair chance because their application wasn't presented appropriately. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to go through, for example, just the requirements and eligibility details for the showcase, even though I don't know how many of you are or are not applying for that, but a lot of this is applicable to every other kind of event that you will apply for online. Everything will require video recording of some kind, almost always, and some kind of written personal statement, and sometimes a budget, sometimes other rationale, sometimes other information. The key in everything is to read the instructions. That's really what it comes down to, is every single application you go through is going to have a different set of criteria. And those criteria are usually set to help the job of the judges make their decision most effectively. So they're not usually made randomly, they're made with a lot of thought, and a lot of people have put time into creating the criteria. So you don't want to be excluded from something simply because you misread or did not read one particular part of the application. So David, do you want to just share briefly the slideshow? So just going to quickly run through the eligibility and requirements for the showcase. And again, as I said, this won't always be the case. Different competitions will have different eligibility and different criteria, of course. Just read ours. We try to be as open as possible. Residents of USA, Canada, or Mexico, you don't need to be a citizen, but you do need to live here. We have criteria for what early music is. What does that mean? It's a huge range historically, but it's very specifically to do with historical performance practice. In our case, we want to have a sense that you have done some research, you actually understand what it is you're doing. We do not have an age range. This is unusual, and I think it's important we don't have an age, either a lower or an upper age range, but it's people who have not otherwise performed regularly in any kind of professional concert series or festival before. Here's a critical thing that has changed for this year. There will be 30 minutes allotted to every performer who is accepted into the showcase. We will be looking at we will take 4 performers. There'll be soloists or ensembles. Everyone will have 30 minutes and everyone will perform on the same evening show. We're working on an additional incentive, which will be that one of those groups will have a professional, we hope, a professional performance the following year in a season. I can't say any more right now, but we're working on that, and that's looking very likely. We do ask that you are a member of EMA. If you're a first-time member, if you're a student, it's $35. If you're a first-time member and you are a student, you can have 1 year of free membership. So that's helpful to know as well. If you are not a member and you feel like it's a struggle financially, you get in touch and we will find ways of passing on a slightly lower membership rate for you, but we do require that everybody is a member in order to apply. David, do you want to move on to the next slide? So the judges, we have an anonymous jury. I know who they are. Nobody else knows who they are. I work with them closely, and they are all established musicians, established early musicians, people who've worked for years in the field. We have a whole range of people representing different instruments, the voice, and different age periods. So different ages, different historical periods. So, if you're applying with something medieval, there is absolutely going to be an expert who's going to hear you play. If you're applying with something from the 19th century, there's going to be somebody who can effectively judge that as well. So we're trying to be as fair as we possibly can. Just bear in mind, they have an enormous number to look at. They have to read all the applications and they have to watch all the videos. Don't send in longer than we ask, please, because nobody's going to, if you send in something that's too long, you probably won't have it listened to at all. I will be, unfortunately, because they're not going to know which bit you actually really want them to listen to. So just think very, very carefully about that. The next slide, David. Required materials. This is something that I suspect there will be some questions about, and so I'm not going to run through them. I'm going to suggest that you actually look at this. If you have questions, please put them down on the Q&A or in the chat area so that we can address those questions directly, because some of you have very specific questions relating to your particular kind of performance. Next slide, David. Oh, deadline. We do stick to the deadline. We have to have a deadline. Deadline is for a reason. And critically, the deadline is Eastern time. So it's not Mountain time or Central time or Pacific time, it's Eastern time. So it's 11:59 Eastern time on Halloween, which is actually only 8:59 p.m. if you're on the West Coast. There's just something to be aware of. We're pretty strict about that. We need to be, because otherwise we would end up taking too many applications from people who were disorganized, left it to the last minute. Just as usual, it's the same with all grants, any kind of application, don't leave it to the last minute. Try and ask us if you have any issues the day before at the very least. That really helps us hugely. We work hard to make a decision as quickly as we can, and we let everybody know and we give everybody feedback. So everybody will hear back. Certainly the accepted artists will hear back by Monday, December 2nd, and everyone will hear back by the end of that week. And we do give feedback to everybody. Is that the end? Oh, travel grant. We do offer travel grants. We do not give fees for the performance in the showcase, but what we do is make sure that you're not too out of pocket. So we ask for you to submit just a simple budget that shows how much it will cost for you to travel there and to stay there. I want to add to you that we will help those who are selected. We will help them with their travel and accommodation wherever we can in terms of logistics. We will help try and find homestay accommodation or UC Berkeley dorm accommodation. San Francisco and Berkeley are incredibly expensive places to stay in hotels. But if you can just put down a simple budget, this does not need to be complicated. It's not a grant application. We just need to see how much it's going to cost you or you and your ensemble to travel to and perform and stay there, because we're going to ask you to be there for at least 2 to 3 nights. We need to know how much that's going to cost you. There, so just quickly running through those. I'm going to hand it over to Alice now, who has in the last few years taken part in a lot of these. She's done tons and tons of applications. She's had to record many times, probably herself on her own, within Cantare as well, and also devise a written statement. Come up with why it is you think you are the people that they should look at. Why is it that your performance is going to stand above anybody else's?
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. There are obviously some very basic things that are important that I think we all know, but having a pretty high quality video camera, which if you don't own one, usually are available in libraries, sometimes even public libraries, but if you're affiliated with a school especially, you should be able to check out a very high quality mic and camera from the school somehow. And then just some really basic, editing, not to splice in different takes, but to cut the beginning and end to make it the right length. And maybe if you have a little extra time, to put a title of what it is and who you are in the video. That can be nice for presentation. And in my experience performing, I think probably a lot of us get caught up in trying to make the perfect recording where every note has to be exact. And if you make a mistake, you want to have another take so that you can try to do it again, but then maybe you make a mistake in a different place. And, we've all had this struggle. And what I've found as I've gone through more and more of these is that it seems to me to be most successful when you don't worry about that so much, and that it's really about the overall performance. It's not necessarily about the individual notes. Obviously, it needs to be a good performance, but it's about, are you conveying something in your performance rather than is every note perfect? I personally listened back to things that I thought I played very perfectly and they weren't actually very interesting. And when I tried to forget about that, maybe my sound was a little scratchy or something, but it was just a more compelling recording and performance in that moment. And I think that really goes a long way for panelists who are judging who should be picked for these things. I know the applications have a lot of written components that can feel very tedious. But I think it's really great to be able to say why it is that you are applying for this particular thing, whatever it is, scholarship, grant, or concert series, something. And why it's important to you to apply and why it is that they should allow you to take part in it. And writing skills, as much as people who know me know that I have always found difficulty with writing, it's really important to develop them, because you may be, writing program notes later for your own or somebody else's ensemble. And just being able to describe things clearly and succinctly is very important. And see, I'm looking over my notes. If you are an ensemble applying for something, to work together on the written material as well. And even if you're by yourself, do have somebody look over it. I always say my mom is my personal editor, so I send her everything. And I also have other people in the field looking at even just simple personal statements, like who know me really, really well, to say, am I getting me across in this? Is this, if you were on this panel, is this what you would want to see given this prompt, so to speak? So I don't know if David or Karen has anything to add, or if there's something I missed.
I'll just go back and just say that make sure your performance is, as exciting and as compelling as you can make it. As Alice said, don't worry about perfection. I mean, obviously you want it to be as good as you can make it, and you want to feel proud of it, but you really also want to communicate something through your music making. You really want it to be something that it makes the jury want to watch your performance. Think about that and show it to some others, show it to other people before you submit it. Show it to people who maybe don't know you terribly well or what your work, because you want to feel that this is an app for, and in this case, it's an application for a performance. So we want people who can perform in a way that really is interesting to the audience. David, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, and I'd also say something that has come up is when you submit your initial materials and then you're accepted, hopefully, when you come to the festival or the workshop or whatever you've been accepted for, to make sure that the way you represented yourself in the application reflects the way you are there. If there's very specific elements in the application of the type of music you're going to be performing or the length of your program, be very careful that those two things are going to stay in sync, because not only do you have to consider how you applied for this festival, but especially in the world of early music, with it being such a tight-knit community, the way that you represent yourself in the application and then at that festival you've been accepted for can positively or negatively impact the way that your future applications will be received and or judged, because at that festival may be one of those judges. So I think just making sure that you have a very clear idea of how you want to present yourself when you're applying, and then that's the package that you come with when you've actually been accepted.
We should see if there are any questions.
There aren't any written questions. If anyone has a question, feel free to put that in the Q&A.
I can add now, you know, I have been on the judge side of a couple of things, and really emphasizing what makes your idea or performance special is really important to the judge, because when you read the personal statements, and then again, if they're very long, you may not have time to actually read the whole thing. So succinct is very important. But is there something specific about the performance style you're doing, or are you experimenting with something new? Are you exploring a new composer? Are you trying a new technique that there's some scholarship on? Like, is your own research directly involved? Like, why are you passionate about doing the thing you're applying for? Because that really comes through in your written statement and in your performance. And I think that that's really important. For my group in Cantare, for example, we are really passionate about discovering lesser known composers, maybe not discovering, but, you know, unearthing them and playing these composers that people have never heard of. And that's part of our mission, is to do that. And so when we apply for things as an ensemble, we really highlight that as why someone should maybe accept our ensemble to perform on their series or something. And that makes us unique, because not everybody does it. So what makes you unique, and why are you applying for this thing?
Well, there aren't any questions on Facebook, and we have one that just came up. And this says, I'm applying for an ensemble singing intensive and wondering about ornamentation. Should I include or avoid?
I mean, a lot of practices say, you know, only ornament if it enhances the music, but that is a really good question. I have also asked myself that, and where I am right now in my life, I think I would rather hear an audition that took the chance of doing ornamentation rather than one that was very plain, because that shows that you're making the effort to do the performance style. And even if maybe I don't know who asked that question, I'm sorry, but maybe even if you're not that familiar with the performance style, but that you're attempting to do ornamentation, that's really important, because that's sort of the first step to even just to be brave enough to do it. And if you know, just found something in your reading of treatises and you decided to use that ornament, you could even maybe say that in your personal statement, that, you know, in your own research, you've read this, and so you really tried to incorporate it in your audition CD, or not CD, that's antiquated now. Karin, you were going to say something. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Was I? Well, yeah, I mean, again, I just feel like if anything you're applying for in early music, I think you just want to show that you've done some research and actually given it some really, and just justify your decision. I think that's all it is, as Alice said. Do you include it, and then explain why you included it? And you could say that maybe this is something that you've only just started working on, or maybe maybe it's not. Maybe it's something you feel very strongly about and have spent a lot of time working on. Either way, just justify it.
I think that's the main thing that I love about historical performance is if you can do anything you want, if you can say why you did it, if you make an informed choice as opposed to just someone telling you, play it like this, well, why am I playing like this? Well, because my teacher told me to. But if you do research and then someone asks you, why did you do that ornament? And you can say, well, I read Quantz and I read Leopold Mozart, and they both, one says this and one says this, and I chose to do this other thing. So I know what parameters exist, and I've made an informed decision to maybe even do something completely different, but I know what's there. So.
More questions? Doesn't matter how basic or how, well, if they're very advanced, we may not be able to answer them, but we'll do our best.
Seems to be all for now at this point. And you can still, until we're done here, you can still try submit any questions that you might have. I'll also mention that if you ever have any questions about our application process or just the process in general, sending an email to us at Early Music America using our contact EMA page at earlymusicamerica.org. We will do our best to reply to you as quickly as possible, especially as the deadline approaches for our own applications. But if you have questions in general about applying for early music programs, feel free to contact us, and if we can't answer the question, we may be able to find someone else who can answer the question for you. And so if anything in this particular webinar comes back later in your dreams tonight or some other time and you want it answered, feel free to just contact us that way, and we'd be more than happy to help there too.
I think before people joined us, the three of us were having a conversation. And one of the things that we were talking about was that our world of historical performance is incredibly small, and that the way, I mean, we all know this, the way you conduct yourself should be professional, but then the way that you follow up with the applications, if you have to write a follow-up, that's where another writing skills come in. And oftentimes the people who are the most passionate about applying in the first place write really insightful responses to their experiences with how they learned or did whatever you're applying for.
Yeah, that's very important to anybody organizing anything, that if you do ask for feedback, we really do like to have feedback that is going to be meaningful in some way. So just think about that again. No questions. Thank you. We looked at ornamentation.
I think that seems to be all of the questions. Before we wrap up, we do want to let you know that this is the second of a series of webinars that we will be continuing Early Music America on the second Sundays of each month. Our next one will be on Sunday, November the 10th, and we'll have a registration available for that pretty soon. In the next week or so, and we'll be talking about practical issues for performers and professional musicians, and talking about issues of everything from taxes to getting travel visas and those types of things, with a panel of experts in those different areas. And so that will be on Sunday, November the 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, for any of you who've tried to take an instrument on an airplane, for example, we'll talk a little bit about those challenges. So thank you, all of you. We really appreciate your taking part in this, and we are very excited to have started this series of webinars, and we're going to continue it second Sunday of every month for, I think, 9 or 10 months of the year. And we'll have a lot of different interesting subjects, topics, and some many guests from the field of early music and beyond. So thank you.
And we want to thank Alice Cullen-Ellison for joining us on the panel this evening. Thank you so much, Alice.
Thank you, Alice.
Well, thank you all. If you have questions, once again, feel free to contact us through the website or message us on Facebook. And thank you for joining us for this webinar, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you.